On January the 7th, 2018, died in Neuilly-sur-Seine at the age of 70, Mrs. France Gall, a famous French French pop and synth pop singer. She had begun her official musical career in 1963 and had ended it in 1997. Most famously, she won the Eurovision Song Contest at the age of 17 in 1965. Curiously, she did not represent France but Luxembourg. She was married to and had a successful singing career in partnership with French singer-songwriter Michel Berger until his death in 1992. The couple had 2 children, one of whom survives her. She was born as Isabelle Geneviève Marie Anne Gall in Paris in October 1947 to a highly musical family. Her father was lyricist Robert Gall, who wrote songs for Edith Piaf and Charles Aznavour, 2 famous French singers of the 20th century. Her mother, Cécile Berthier, was a singer herself and the daughter of Paul Berthier, co-founder of Les Petits Chanteurs à la Croix de Bois. The sole daughter of the family, she had 2 brothers, Patrice and Claude. In 1963, more specifically in the spring of that year, Mr. Gall encouraged his daughter to record songs and send the demos to music publisher Denis Bourgeois. That July, she auditioned for Bourgeois at the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées in Paris, after which Bourgeois wanted to sign her immediately. France was subsequently signed to Philips. Because she was still a minor, her father had to sign the contract for her. The first airplay of France's first single, Ne sois pas si bête, Don't Be So Stupid, occurred on her 16th birthday in October 1963. Released in November of that year, it became a hit, selling 200,000 copies. Serge Gainsbourg, who had released several albums and written songs for singers including Michel Arnaud and Juliette Gréco, was asked by Bourgeois to write songs for Gall. Gainsbourg's answer, N'écoute pas les idoles, don't listen to the idols, his song became, of that title, became Gall's second single. It carried the top of the French charts in 1963, staying there for 3 weeks. At the same time, Miss Gall made her live debut, opening for Sacha Distel in Belgium. Then, having previously resisted, Gall gave in to her managers at the end of 1964 and recorded a single recording or disc intended for children. The song Sacré Charlemagne, or Sacré du Charlemagne, the anointing of Charlemagne, written by her father and set to the music of George Leiferman, was a hit in 1965, selling 2 million copies and peaking at number 1. Then she was selected to represent Luxembourg in the Eurovision Song Contest 1965. Out of the 10 songs proposed to her, she chose Mr. Gainsbourg's Poupée de cire, Poupée de son, or Wax Doll, Rag Doll. In March 1965, Mr. Gainsbourg, Miss Gall, and Mr. Goraguet attended the finals of the song contest in Naples, where the song was allegedly booed in rehearsals for straying so far from the sort of song usually heard in the contest at this point. Although she may not have sung excellently, one critic claimed that she had sung far from perfect, and although she may have sung even out of tune, and she probably looked pale, and when she called her boyfriend at the time, Mr. Claude François, immediately after the performance, he even shouted at her, "You sang off-key, you were terrible." The jury was impressed, and she won the contest. And she even recorded Poupée de Cire, Poupée de Son in French, German, Italian, and Japanese. There seems to be no English version released by Ms. Gall herself, although there was an English cover by the English 1960s star Twinkle. In 1965, she toured France for several months with Le Grand Cirque de France, or the Great Circus of France, a combination of radio show and live circus. After a TV film directed by Jean-Christophe Averty and dedicated to the songs of Gall was distributed in the United States in 1965, she was sought by Mr. Walt Disney to appear as Alice in a musical film version of Alice in Wonderland. The project was cancelled, however, after Disney himself died in 1966. That same year, she appeared in the television film Viva Morandi, made in the same psychoanalytical mold as the 1965 Federico Fellini film Giulietta degli Spiriti, or Juliet of the Spirits. In 1966, her children's song Les Leçons Particulières, or Private Lessons, was the subject of public notoriety and displeasure. The same occurred when Jean-Christophe Averty choreographed a troupe of men on all fours, that is, crawling, to illustrate another of her children's songs, J'ai retrouvé mon chien, I've found my dog, or found my dog again, on his television program Les Raisins Verts. At the beginning of 1967, Miss Gall sang a duet with Maurice Biraud, La Petite, which describes a young girl coveted by a friend of her father. Although struggling in France, Miss Gall regularly recorded in West Germany from 1966 to 1972, especially with the composer and orchestrator Werner Müller. She had a successful German career with songs by Horst Buchholz and Giorgio Moroder. Love, L'amour und Liebe, 1967, Hippie Hippie, 1968, Ich liebe dich, so wie du bist, I love you the way you are, 1969, and Mein Herz kann man nicht kaufen, My heart is not for sale, 1970. In 1968, Miss Gall had several other releases in France, none of which aroused any great interest. She was seduced by Michel Berger's music when she heard his song Attends-moi, Wait for Me, one day in 1973. 6 months later, in 1974, after she sang vocals on the song Mon fils rira du rock and roll on Berger's new album, Gall's publisher asked him, at her request, to write for her. And not only did they become musically and artistically involved, but they also fell in love with each other and got married in June 1976. They had a daughter and a son together. The daughter tragically died already in 1997. Mr. Berger himself died in 1992. In 1978, pushed by Berger, Mrs. Gall once again trod the boards of the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées, where she had auditioned 15 years earlier, starring in a show entitled Made in France. In 1985, she joined Chanteurs Sans Frontières, or Singers Without Borders, on the initiative of Valérie Lagrange. She also worked for SOS Éthiopie for the benefit of Ethiopia under the aegis of Renault. Ethiopia at the time had a severe famine. In 1985 and 1986, Mrs. Gall worked with Berger, Richard Berry, Daniel Balavoine, and Lionel Rocage for the benefit of Action École, an organization of schoolboy volunteers which collected essential food products in France for African countries, or still does that, where famine and drought prevail. Mrs. Gall took a break from singing in the early 1990s and did not record any more for several years to come. She did, however, make an album called Double Jeu with Michel Berger, and after that they announced a series of concerts in various Parisian venues. Unfortunately, Mr. Berger's sudden death from a heart attack in August 1992 ended this project. In 1996, Mrs. Gall asked Jean-Luc Godard to produce the video clip of her song Plus haut, or Higher, taken from her album France. In 1997, she announced her retirement and recorded an unplugged show for French television showcasing songs from her final album. Pauline, her daughter, was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis soon after she was born. And she died despite the best of their efforts to care for her in December 1997 at the age of 19. Gall herself was diagnosed with breast cancer in April 1993, however, it was successfully treated. After her daughter died, Mrs. Gall made only occasional public appearances. Her son Raphael is a music supervisor. Gall staged and appeared in the 2007 France 2 documentary Tous pour la musique, marking the 15th anniversary of Michel Berger's death. She herself then was responsible for writing the script for a comedy that was first performed in November 2015. She died of an infection complicated from cancer at the American Hospital of Paris in Neuilly-sur-Seine on January the 7th, 2018 at the age of 70.